Hi everybody, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog. And I know I teased that I was going to do another sewing tutorial today, but I'm not going to do that because those do take a little bit longer to do. But today I kind of want to explore the idea of layers of reality and layers of storytelling and how things can move between those different layers. I've always been a fan of the type of story where there's multiple layers of storytelling going on. The classic example of this is, of course, Don Quixote. Another great example is the manuscript found in Saragossa, or even the Futurological Congress is another good one that I really like. In all of these books, there is an element of you're reading the main narrative of what's going on, but then the characters experiencing that reality will meet another character who then starts telling them a story. So you drop down one layer in the narrative into the next layer below, and that's where you're kind of hanging out for a while. And sometimes the characters in that layer of the narrative will tell a story. And sometimes inside of that story, there's another story. And I've always been really fascinated by that type of kind of layered fictions, I guess, and how one could move objects between those different layers of storytelling. And it's something that Sean and I actually do a lot because we're artists and we just make stuff up all the time, and we have more ideas than we can possibly ever always make them real. We're constantly making up new things that don't exist, and we seed them into places. So in Pork magazine, which Sean used to draw pictures of in his other drawings before Pork ever existed. So Pork is actually an example of this as well. We seeded Pork over the years with a lot of fictional products, fake bands that we made up. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that in the review section. There were several fake reviews or fictional reviews for fictional bands that are just kind of my concept bands that I've come up with. And we also have a whole line of fake products that exist in Pork magazine. You may have read about UFO milk energy drink, or punk ramen, or our house brand of beer, Shyster Brow, which Sean always draws. Whenever he draws someone drinking a beer, they're drinking a Shyster Brow. And at one point, years ago, we wanted to have a photo shoot where we really had a can of Shyster Brow for the photo shoot. So we made one. Sean made this beautiful can of Shyster Brow. It's actually, I think, a can of beans. We're not even sure at this point what's actually in the can. But this was our stand-in for Shyster Brow for a really long time. And the kind of curious thing about this, seeding our fiction or our reality with fake things is that sometimes they come to life. So he's been drawing Shyster Brow for years, and then he made the mock-up of Shyster Brow. And then our friends at Oakshire Brewing actually made us some Shyster Brow, an entire 6-pack. We haven't opened it. I love this. It's so cool. Sean completely made this up, and now it's a real thing. And like I said, Pork magazine was like that as well. He made it up. He was drawing it into his drawings way before he ever made the magazine. In fact, he was drawing Dungeon Degenerates into Pork magazine way before we ever made Dungeon Degenerates the game. So I love that kind of idea of we can make up a product, or we can make up a project that doesn't exist yet. We can talk about it. We talk about it as if it's a fictional thing and a real thing at the same time. When we're talking to each other, we sometimes call them fake products, but then we started thinking about it differently and calling them future products instead. Because that's what seems to happen, is they exist in the realm of the imagination for a while, and then they become a drawing, and we talk about them as if they're real, and then eventually they actually become a real thing that we're doing, like Pork magazine, like Dungeon Degenerates, like the cans of Shyster Brow. So we have brought a couple of other props. This is my Street Fight Art Crime brand of spray paint that we don't make yet, but boy, we'd like to. At one point when we were doing Weirdo Club, Sean made this awesome bottle of weird wine. I love this label so much. And then, of course, we drank the weird wine, so I turned it into a Shibori Scrap Molotov cocktail, but there you go, weird wine. And in a reversal, we actually have had real things become fake things and then kind of become real things again. Oh, that was kind of confusing, but way back in the day, 1994, I think Sean said, he was homebrewing cider and he didn't cap his cider correctly and spiders got into it. And he decided to just leave the dead spiders in the cider and keep going and bottling it. And thus spider cider was born. And a bunch of people got really wrecked drinking spider cider back in the day. And Sean saved one bottle, and you can see there's still actually about an inch of spider cider in the bottom of this bottle. And there is some grody gunk, which is spiders in the bottom of this cider. And it's kind of a test for people. We make people take a sip of the spider cider to like show how down they really are sometimes. So anyhow, when we were making the game and coming up with the items and loot for the game, Sean was like, well, we have to put spider cider in the game. So spider cider went from being a real thing to being a fictional loot item inside of Dungeon Degenerates. But then when we were doing a release party at Reverend Nat's Cider, he said, hey, can we come up with a cool theme cider for you guys to brew for the release event? And we immediately said, we got to make spider cider as a real thing that people can really have. And bless Nat, he went out there and really looked and tried to find food grade edible spiders. But the problem was they weren't cheap enough to put into the spider cider for the release. It was going to make it so astronomically expensive to do spider cider. And we were like, oh, we'll just collect some spiders and give them to you. And he's, running a legit business and it's a food product. So he's like, no, we have to have actual food grade spiders if we're going to make spider cider. So we didn't actually get to make spider cider, but we have another drink from the game called the Elixir of Life. And so when we did the release party, Nat, oh, I'm knocking everything on the table over. Excuse me, trying to pick this up to show you guys. Elixir of Life, it's real. So things can go both ways, right? Spider cider goes into the game but hasn't come out yet. Elixir of Life came swooshing itself out of the game and is now a real thing. It was limited edition, so you can't get it now, but it's very delicious and it's very cool too. It's got charcoal in it and like edible glitter. I don't know if you guys can see the swirlies there on that. Oh yeah, Elixir of Life, Reverend Nat's Hard Cider. Thank you, Nat. This is wonderful. So there's all of these things that are, if only we had enough budget to actually do this, we would totally make. We absolutely want to make punk ramen a real thing. We absolutely want to make UFO milk energy drinks a real thing. And I'm sure that some of them, not all of them come to pass, but a lot of these things, which are just kind of funny ideas for things that we share as an inside joke, or Sean will, put into a piece of writing or whatever, sometimes eventually actually become a real thing. And it always feels like that same thing with the nested narrative layers, where it's like we're taking something and pulling it from one layer of reality up to the next layer, or up to the next layer above that, or up to the next layer above that. And of course, the thing with nested realities is, well, how far can you go? Is this it? Is this reality that we're experiencing right now the top level? Or is there another level that we can go to? Of course, anyone who is a student of meditation will tell you there is not only one other level you can go to, but several other levels you can go to. So I'm always curious to explore the idea of how we could pass between those levels. And, with consciousness expansion, or go down levels by putting yourself into a fictional reality. Of course, fandoms and cosplaying and all of these sorts of things that we have are also expressions of this same idea, taking something from inside of a book or inside of a movie or inside of a video game or whatever, and exploding it out into real reality and moving with that and going forwards. And I love this idea. I love playing around with the concept of nested realities and nested narratives. And I just think it's the coolest thing ever. And it's worked out really well for me and Sean. Of course, there's an entire backlog of things that we've never made that only exist in our imaginations or, scribbled in a notebook somewhere. But it's so much fun to play with this idea. Of course, dreams are another place that you can get into this idea of a nested reality. And the movie Inception plays with this idea, obviously, also a lot. So that's kind of it. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about some of these fictional products that we've seeded into the magazine in the past that then have actually become real. And my dream that in the future we really will have punk ramen and UFO milk energy drink, because those are too cool to not exist. Look through your old issues of Pork and see if you can spot my fake bands that are in there as well, because there are several of them. What do you guys think about nested realities or nested fictions? I'd love to hear whatever your feedback is about that. If you've got books that are kind of the same idea as the one I was talking about at the beginning of the vlog to recommend, I'd love to hear recommendations. You know, I'm always up for a new piece of media to explore. So I'm going to leave it right there. I will be back in a couple days. Excuse me. It's allergy season also, which is making it harder for me to do long format vlogs. Oof. Hopefully we'll be past it soon. I will be back in a couple of days with the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. Man, it is going to be a short one this week. So far this week, we've watched half of one movie. So we'll see if we can catch up to something else by Sunday, or maybe I'm just reviewing one movie. You guys will have to tune in on Sunday if you want to find out. Until then, take care. I'll see you next time.